Welcome, Cool Cats and Kittens. This is your Commissioner Tim with Co-Commissioner Brandon. And you see right here, we've got one of the new faces joining our league for the second season of the 2022 Cool Cats and Kittens Dynasty League. So this kicks off our first video of this new series that we're trying to do around the preseason manager interviews, getting to know the managers, asking questions around where the manager feels like they're at for the season, and just moving from there. So Brandon, why don't you sort of take us away and sort of introduce Kyle?
Yeah, so first off, just welcome, Kyle. Already, I know we mentioned this, but you're already such a big piece of this league, all your moves and everything. It's made it fun for sure. So thank you for that. We just really wanted to get started with all of our managers, kind of get to know you sort of thing. Learning from our first or our inaugural dynasty season. We have managers that don't know each other yet, might be spread across the world. We're just going to start off with some of those basic kind of cliche interview questions, just to get to know you. Obviously, whatever you're comfortable sharing. So first off, just tell us about yourself. What do you do? What do you do for fun? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so my name's Kyle Kennedy. Happy to be joining the league. I'm a project manager in the construction industry based out of Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, so up north. I'll let you Americans try to find that on a map later, but pretty close to Eve. Been doing fantasy football for about 7 years now, and it just got too easy. When you're winning every year and redraft, it's looking for that that next step. And I don't know if dynasty will be a real challenge, but it's a step up. But that's kind of where I'm heading now, right? So,
what does NFL Sunday look like for you? What do you have any routines or anything you like to do?
Oh yeah. So we're 2 p.m.'s kickoff. Sunday scaries are gone by then. I got a good brunch in me. Maybe back on the mojitos. We don't know. Depends on the weekend. And then big Steelers fan, so I normally get the 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock game. But I'm a big red zone guy now, so I got the big TV on red zone full time. And then if my team's playing, I got the iPad going or another TV. So, Sunday's pretty well locked down from 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock. You're not seeing me leave the house too much. So it's a great fall winter pastime, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I know you mentioned the mojitos. Do you have any other favorite drinks that you like to partake in on Sundays or any other days of the week?
We have real beer up here too, right, in Canada. So I'm a big Keys fan. So we keep it light. We all got to work Monday, but the Steelers are pretty bad lately. So there's more beer than not lately.
Awesome, Tim. Do you have any other intro questions?
So yeah, hey, going from Koopa Coffee over to Moncton Meerkats with the trade for Cooper Cup in a little bit. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the name? I know you sort of wanted to get that done before the interviews today.
Yeah, so I think I got about maybe 3 players left on my roster from the draft. That was 3 weeks ago. So it was getting tough having a team name based on a player. So, the Meerkats, the deadliest animal in North America. So, we got to live up to my mascot's name. So, Moncton Meerkats are here to stay. We're going to plant our flag here in Moncton and bring some Dynasty Championships home. And we want to start the season off with a rock solid name,
That's great to see. So Kyle, maybe transitioning over to the, the league conversation at large, let's kick you off right at the genesis of, where your story began with Cool Cats and Kittens on the new manager draft that we had about a month ago. You obviously heard Brandon and I talking about, our opinions on it. I think it'd be supremely fun for us to just hear from the manager directly, what your thought was going into it. Talk to me about sort of the emotions and plans that you had going into it, and maybe emotions and, the shifting of your strategy throughout it.
Yeah, I think it became obvious about 6 picks in, kind of where the other guy's head was at. And I just tried to stay water and change up, the strategy. Justin Jefferson was obviously the big name on the board. And when he started coming out, guns blazing, going after his guys, I saw his salary kind of dwindling away, and I saw the depth that was going to be available later in the draft. And just kind of pivoted to capitalize on that later. And I think, I got a couple big starters that I grabbed well under, what the typical auction value's for. Definitely wasn't my strategy going in, but I think it panned out pretty well. So, both guys have their own strategies. You can, kind of think for yourself on who was better off. And I guess we'll see this season, but, I kind of pivoted pretty early and I'm pretty happy with the results.
Yeah, we mentioned that too, and that was pretty apparent. I mean, whether or not what strategy is better, you definitely took advantage of his coming out of the gates hot for sure. Off of that, I mean, you came out of the draft with a great team. It was a deep team. I think it was a team that already probably would have pushed for the playoffs, but you obviously weren't content. What was your thinking kind of around post draft, making moves? What kind of things were you looking for, and what direction were you trying to take?
Yeah, I think running back and wide receiver, I came out pretty solid. Mind you, half of them wear a Band-Aid more than they don't. So there's that going for me, I guess, or against me. But quarterback was definitely an issue I needed to address. I came up pretty quick. And in my opinion, this year's draft is kind of weak in the actual NFL. And I was looking to compete right now, so I made some moves to kind of get that. I really want to, with us being a 2 QB league and seeing long term that it might just go super flex. I was confident in, putting the assets out there to get those QBs in long term. Like, I mean, listen, we're not a charity here on the Moncton Meerkats. I'd rather put 10 guys out there than 11. If that 11th team member doesn't have that winning mentality, we're going to get rid of those bad apples. We can't play with them. We can't coach them. We can't win with them. So we moved on from those guys and we got the right pieces, right? So
it's awesome. Well said.
That's sort of like summarize some of the trades, right? There's obviously the big moves that you made, I think, for Dak Prescott. I believe shortly after that was the acquisition of, was Mike Evans part of that trade as well? Or was that a separate trade that was Eckler related? Yeah.
That was after for Evans and Eckler. I'm not a big Aaron Jones fan. I'm not a big Green Bay fan. I just didn't see that working out. And I think the right opportunity came up to grab a running back that doesn't, is not a banger, kind of a guy that's probably going to be durable for me. And Mike Evans, he's a win now player for sure with Brady, but I mean, who knows? Brady keeps drinking as much water as he is. He might be around until 50. So, Mike Evans might be a steal. So,
and then maybe talk through sort of the trade around. So you talked about Eckler, and then I think you hinted it away at Dak. Talk to us about sort of the two recent trades. Talk to us through the Canadian inclusion, the 3-team, our first leagues, by the way, Brandon, that was our first league 3-team trade that actually happened through the native functions. So talk to us about that, and then I'd
give
love
us
for
some
you to
background on that. I'm just so intrigued. Like, how long did that take to come together? How did that all work out?
Yeah, so we went over to Eve's office for the draft, the NFL draft, and he had a whiteboard there. And you're not gonna have a whiteboard in the draft without doing a trade tree, right? So I still had a glaring hole. I think at that time I had Prescott and Tua, and I mean, there's a lot of people that can throw the ball farther than Tua, so that wasn't really my long-term goal. I had Travis in the room next to me with Stafford, and I would have loved to have kept the Stafford and Cup connection. But in terms that's the next trade after this, I should say. But in terms of the 3-team, we just really felt bad for Eve. He's going to fly all the way to Vegas, and he's got one pick. Like I said earlier, I'm not a charity, but if it benefits the team, and I think it benefited us and Travis, if we're able to give Eve a 3rd-round pick so we can come to Vegas and, actually do something, we were happy to get that done. So, and if it's a historic first for the league with a 3-team, even better.
Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely see your strategy. You talk through it. Seems like picks are kind of secondary. You want some win now guys. And I think that's smart. Any feelers out there for your last 2 picks this year? Are you going to hold on to those? What's that looking like?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be my first time going to Vegas. So, I might not even make the draft. Right. So, but right now, I think I'm sitting with the 2nd, 4th pick. So, in a 12-man league, that's a late first. And it's a pretty deep wide receiver pool. I did give up Darnell Mooney last night. So, I'm looking to kind of backfill that position longer term. I'm not as old as Eve's team. I don't think anyone else could be. But I'm definitely up there. So, I'm going to keep some options for the future.
I'm curious now in terms of how you sort of think about, your quarterbacks, your running backs. So let's go through all sort of the major positions, sort of how you think about it. And you can share as much as you want. I think the rest of the league will also look at it too. So if there's like something you want to put on the trade block or some kind of feelers that you're thinking about it, that will maybe help facilitate whatever you're looking to do. Go ahead,
Yeah.
man. So maybe start from like QBs all the way down to, your bench.
Yeah, sure. So I got Jackson and Prescott right now. There's an argument to be made that that's, I would say, probably the second best QB tandem in this league right now, especially just with the value of rushing touchdowns, compared to throwing. So it's always nice to have mobile quarterbacks. So I'm pretty locked there. I don't see me making any more moves in terms of that position. Running back, I mean, if you told me in a redraft that I was going to start the season with McCaffrey, Eckler, and Barkley, I think anyone would be happy with that. Now, those couple of those names, let's see if they can even play 12 games this year. I'd be happy with 12 with two of those guys. So that's probably the linchpin in my strategy in terms of that. But I mean, I was able to backfill a little bit with Josh Jacobs. I have handcuffs for both Barkley and McCaffrey. So, and I got Kareem Hunt out there as long as he stays out of jail. So, I got some fill-ins there for that as well. Until last night, I had a great wide receiver core, I don't think you could do better if you're looking to go out and win than Cup and Diggs. But I saw the depth I had in wide receiver, and obviously I don't want to move on from Cup, but if that means I can bring in a Lamar Jackson, that's going to be a piece for the future, and sell Cup at his high. I mean, I don't think that season's repeatable, but I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that was the right trade to make. And then finally, tight end. I mean, with it being an 8-person team league, if you don't have the top 4 tight ends, there's lots to kind of pick from. I have Waller. The argument could be made. He's, maybe outside of that top 3 now. But I'm confident enough to roll the dice with him going in now.
How do you think about, so you said QB, you feel like that stack is your 2. How would you let's go position by position, because I'm just curious on your analysis, because, we've had the chance as coach commissioners and Brandon and I for us to talk about our opinions. How do you think about, you said your QB stack is 2 in the league. How do you look at the rest of the league, and, how would you rank the QB stack?
Sure. So yeah, I would say you probably have I would start off at the top. I would say you probably have the best tandem right now, with Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Right after that, I would put myself right there. After that, third, I believe it's John that has Wilson, Brady, and
No, it's Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
See, that's why we're doing these interviews, boys, right? I would throw him right there. And then John is with Herbert, right?
Yeah,
so
Herbert and Lawrence. Herbert, Lawrence, Trey Lance.
Those 3 there. And I think he's got 1,000 other young quarterbacks on his team too, right? So, right now I'd put him at 4, but there's an opportunity to move up there as well. And then he's old, but he's, it's reliable with Mahomes and Stafford. They're going to huck the ball up a lot this year. It's just that's a pretty touchdown dependent kind of team, but who knows?
Sounds good. And then, your running back core, like you said, you feel very good about it. Where do you have your running backs in terms of the league?
This year, number 1, bar down.
That's going to be a CMC, Eckler, and Saquon Barkley as basically your 3 main go-to running backs. And you got Josh Jacobs sitting at the flex for you. You've also got Melvin Gordon, who's probably going to be splitting a decent amount of touches with Javonte Williams this year as well. And like you said, I'm looking at your roster now. You got the handcuffs for CMC and Saquon as well. So yeah, that's a pretty solid running back core. Brandon, what do you think about the running back core there in terms of his strength and depth?
Yeah, it's pretty sneaky deep, actually. Obviously at the top, yeah, I mean, it's the cream of the crop. You couldn't ask for a better running back group. Like you said, I think injuries are going to be the big piece, but it gets sneaky deep with those handcuffs. And I'm not sure that I even noticed that when we did kind of the walkthrough preview of your team coming into the season. But I mean, you're pretty gold. That's a good insurance policy to have on some of those guys. And these are all guys that if the first one goes down, I mean, they slide right in. They've proven they can slide right in and keep getting those sorts of numbers. So yeah, what looks like probably the biggest weakness, if that's even the right word, or potential area for disaster that we've seen that we saw last year, you're kind of covered for it. You're not going to have to scramble and overpay for one of those handcuffs or hope you get lucky on waivers. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the move on Terry McLaurin and Josh Jacobs in the recent trades has really aided Kyle's depth as well. Because we saw last year, it's so much around like, who cares if you have top, like the players' health? If they miss 3 games, it could be at a late season, it could be early season when it's critical for playoff positioning. You might not even make it into the playoffs, as we saw with some roster spots last year.
Yeah. I think what's important to note too is McLaurin and Josh Jacobs are playing for contracts this year.
Yeah.
Both should get them. Jacobs, obviously his 5th year was declined last year or this year. So yeah, I mean, just that extra little chip on your shoulder, you can almost bank on getting that extra boost as far as production there. So yeah, it's great.
All right, so Kyle, we talked about the running backs. I'm really curious, and we're going to do this for the rest of the league at large in terms of, we saw Brandon and my estimations on the strength of the roster and where our predictions on where it all ends up. But I want to organize this for all the managers at large, and we can sort of publish this at the end of the series. So you've talked to us about the running backs. Curious around your fits on how you see sort of the receivers on where you sit and where the rest of the league is in terms of their rankings in the receiver position.
I think I left the draft and I thought the receivers were probably my top asset, just in terms of starters. Now I did have Claypool, Mooney, and then I quickly made a trade for Pittman, and I couldn't even slot those guys in. So that kind of tells you, where I was at. So when I was looking to upgrade quarterback, to grab a Terry McLaurin, kind of go a little bit younger and trade away Cup, unfortunately. I don't think I moved down too far, but I definitely think I moved myself down a little bit. I think with it being an 8-team league, though, I find wide receivers tough to kind of put a ranking to. I would put myself right there, top 3 again. But it kind of becomes tricky because, I mean, we don't even know a lot of teams where they're thinking yet, right? And you look at the draft, like you got Bateman becoming the number 1 wide receiver for the ball, like for Baltimore. Like there's a lot of shifting pieces in wide receiver, I think, this year more than anything. But yeah, I would rank myself top 3. And then, I think you got to mention Eve, and I think you got to mention you, Tim, as the other ones, just kind of those veteran guys. Well, you're younger, I would say. But WR1s on both those teams. So I would put those guys there, top 3.
I think obviously you've mentioned Eves, who's got Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp now. He's also got, after that, there's a decent drop with Hunter Renfrow and Brandon Ayuk. And then obviously I think I want to highlight Ryan, because Ryan's conversation hasn't come up yet. He's rostering Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at the 1 and 2 with the receivers of Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, at sort of the flexes for him with Amari Cooper, Marquise Browns, and Jalen Waddle on the bench. So I think we all forget about how deep in that is. I think for me, Ryan is the clear cut number 1 there in terms of both dynasty, but also the season's competing as well.
A lot of those big names you listed are now on the same team. So I was trying to kind of pivot off that. So you'll saw that, I was willing to move Cup because if Robinson does kind of have a resurgence, I'd rather be plugging him in as a flex than having him in there at the detriment to Cup and also starting him, right? So I think Ryan's going to have to get creative here in what he's going to do with Jalen Waddle and Hill, and even Higgins and Chase, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you. When you look at the names on paper, top guys, but when you start plugging rosters week to week, that becomes tricky. So, I think he's got some moves to make there, and I'm happy to hear from him.
Just to kind of circle back on the Allen Robinson thing, I don't think that's something that should be glossed over. He's an incredible talent that hasn't played with the quarterback in his entire career. So, you trade away Cup, which anytime you want to trade guys at their peak, absolutely. Allen Robinson's no slouch. I mean, he's a better player than Bobby Trees in LA. I think he could, eat a good chunk of Cooper Kupp's targets. So yeah, I mean, I like the trade, and I like it even more given that you have Allen Robinson sitting on your bench in a spot that you don't even need him at this point. So just sitting there just in case something happens. But yeah, all around, I'm very high on Allen Robinson. I think he's a great player, not for my team, but I think he's a good talent that's going to really thrive in LA. So I think that'll be a good piece for you.
I think we can sort of skip through the tight ends as my thoughts. I think, Kyle, you touched on it a lot, which is we're an 18 league. After you get through the bottom 5 on, maybe bottom 6 on, 6 through 15, it's a dart throw. Like any one of those guys will go up and down in a given year.
All right, so the next place we want to go with this, maybe I'm a little bit more intrigued by this than others, just given I own half the picks in our league. But Kyle, what are your like standings predictions? How do you foresee this league shaking out regular season, and then maybe if you have any predictions for playoffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I think it's obvious. I see you right at the top, Brandon. Like you obviously have the strongest roster.
Thank you. Yeah.
In 2028. But if we're talking 2020, I think you guys hit it well on the recap video. Now, there's been some shakeup trades. I think that would be more affect the middle of the pack. I think the top 3 still heavily stays the same. I hate to do it to Eve, but I put him at the same spot you guys are. Like I'll start at 4. I put him getting in there as the last spot. If he stays healthy, he's got a pretty consistent team. Those guys have been playing football for 38 years each. So, they know what they're doing by now. And then right after that, Tim, I mean, I'd argue that in the last 2 weeks, your team took the biggest shit kicking, pardon my French, in the draft and just players re-signing. It's going to be interesting to see, how AJ Brown does, how Javonte does, CeeDee Lamb, I think, is in a great spot this year. I don't think that's changed. I don't think, if anything, their line's gotten better, so that helps Dak. So, I mean, I still put you right there, 2-3. And then Ryan, I mean, he's proved it. He did it last year. He should be right back there as well. And then, I mean, I wouldn't be a good GM for the Moncton Meerkats if I didn't put myself right at the top. Right? So I have no problem putting that target on my back day one. We came in here to win. I'm willing to go to, fairly amazing lengths to make this season successful. That means inconveniencing other teams. That's fine. This isn't intramurals. Not everyone gets a trophy. Personally, I feel like my team could go into hell right now with a squirt gun. So, and coming on top. So, I want to be bold about it. I want to put it out there. I think it's my year, right? So.
I love that fire. So we've got, yeah, I love that. So we got Kyle sort of sitting at 1, Ryan at 2, me at 3, Eve's at 4. Curious around sort of your bottom 4, who misses out, and we'll talk about tiers in a little bit, but ultimately sort of the final finishing spots.
Final finishing spots, and I'll go reverse again. Keep the suspense up. We want good TV here. So, Brandon, you're there at 8. I mean, you got more points than you do know what to do with. It's a bold strategy. I'm excited to see how it plays out. So you're there, but you want to be there. So there's a difference in that. And then after that, I mean, it all comes down to injuries and, kind of where we're at. I think Mr. Ambassador, he came out, he picked his guys. He knows where he wants to be. I think like you guys said in the recap video, it's kind of the identity of the team's not really known. So I don't know. He might make some moves and try to move up towards contention, or he also might try to move back. But right now I kind of have him at 7th just on that current roster. And it's more just because I don't even know where to put it. After that, I would put Travis. When he was at the draft, he said it himself, he can't put a price on grit. I think he's still got some pieces he can move. It's going to be interesting to see too, because I think he might decide to move back and try to acquire some more picks. That's easier said than done now that Brandon's got a stranglehold on first round picks. So I think you don't want to be in these positions right now. I mean, the last place guy has locked up the picks, and the guys in the middle, it's a lot harder to go up and down the elevator, right? Because going down is going to cost you more in assets than ever before. And then I think John is right there competing for 5th with Eve, kind of pivot back and forth. So I think it's more tiers than actual placement of teams, right? Like what you talked about in the recap.
So for you, looking at the tiers, so just going down, right? We got Kyle, Ryan, Tim, Eves, John, Travis, Sergey, then Brandon. In terms of your predictions for the ultimate season finishing, how's that look when you put that into the tier system like you talked about?
Yeah, so I mean, and again, I got a little Canadian bias. I'm rooting for Travis, just a good Moncton boy, born and raised. So that's good. I got that for him. Yeah, right at the top, and I mean all the way at the top is me. I would say 1A, and then I want to go 1B, but I think it's more of a 1CD instead. Like I think there's like a gap. It's still the same, but there's missing a letter there.
Yeah.
This is gonna drive Tim crazy. Tim's making a move right after this video.
Yeah.
No, I love this. I love this.
Listen, it's a long season. I'm gonna stay patient. Like I view my team as a woodpecker in a forest right now. Like we're just gonna keep busy and look for opportunity. So I want everyone else on tilt after this, right? So I want them to go to this interview and just not sleep tonight about their team, right? So second, third, yeah, that's it's Tim and it's Ryan. I got a soft spot for Eve after, good Canadian boy. And he's got a soft spot for old people, and that's fine. They can still win, so I got him right there, but that's a separate tier. So, and then fifth, I got Ryan. It all comes down to, does he buy pieces from the other guys to move up?
John, you mean?
John, yeah. And after that, it's Trey and Travis, and they flip flop for me. I have them kind of in the same tier. And then right at the bottom is Brandon. And I mean, like, I think we could honestly add 2 more teams this year, and Brandon would still be at the bottom, right? Like, I think if you strummed waivers, I think you could put a starting roster together a little stronger, right? So
hey, I'm not sure that my team's even reached the bottom yet. So let's not get out ahead of ourselves.
Well, and that's what I like to hear, because there's a couple guys on your team that I think deserve another shot. I don't think that you should just abandon them. You don't need them on your team. They don't belong there, right? So I'm looking at Tony Pollard, right? Like, just give the guy a break.
Yeah, I mean, he called his agent this week and he requested a trade. So we'll see what happens. I'm in no rush.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So just to break all that down, just so we have it, we got one tier, first tier, which is 1A, 1C, and 1D, in Kyle, Tim, and Ryan. And then you've got Eves in his own tier. So those 2 tiers sort of seems like the shoe-ins for you from a playoff standpoint. And you got John sitting on his own tier at 5, looking outside in. And then Travis and Sergey at that third, so that 4th tier as them 2. And then you got Brandon with a huge gap with a bunch of waivers in between. And then you've got Brandon at the bottom of that.
Yeah, if you could do a graphic and kind of just show Everest and then like me there and then Brandon below sea level, that would be ideal.
Tim, is that something we could do? Could we add a 9th team of waivers just to see if it would beat mine?
We should create a theoretical team throughout the season. We should just do that. You know what we should do? You know how they call it the replacement value?
Yeah.
We should have the replacement value and see if Brandon can beat the replacement value.
And it'll be like regulated at the end of this season. I'm gonna go down to AAA. All right, so the questions now I think I'm probably most enthusiastic about, just given that, as you said, I'm not competing until 2028. How do you foresee, let's say 3 to 5 years down the road, looking at your team? I think you've mentioned it. You have quite a few win now sort of guys that probably won't be, if we're looking at that 5-year length, likely won't be in your starting lineup. Do you have any thoughts about that? Are you solely focused on winning now and you'll kind of just deal with that as it goes? Or are you more of like a retool sort of on the fly kind of manager?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of retooling after how this year shakes out. I mean, I like my roster on paper probably better than Tim, but I think I'd be remiss to say, that Tim has a younger team and more picks down the road and he's still ready to compete now. So, the window is short, in my opinion. It's 1 to 2 years. That's 2 trophies sitting on my back shelf. So, I mean, that's nothing to shake my head at, I sleep well at night knowing that. But Yeah, I think I can retool. I think some of the recent moves I made me a little younger as well. With McLaurin, I just hope the Commanders wake up and free that man. He deserves better in life. And with Lamar and Dak, I mean, I got some youth there in quarterback that I can lock up. So it lets me. My biggest concern is that my running backs, with the value that are in there as they head towards their careers, their value are declining, and I'm not afraid to say that, right? So they're definitely at their ceiling now, if not very close. What that window looks like, I'm not sure, but I think I have the tools in place. I can retool with my depth, but if I do retool, I think it'll be at the sacrifice of depth. So we'll see where I'm at there.
How do you sort of think about the we'll do this fun prediction that Brandon did too on the manager interviews. Talk to me about the league 3-5 years from now, whatever window in between that timeline you're thinking about. What are we looking at this time 3-5 years down the road from now?
I would say television deal and 2 more seasons on TV. I would say at that point, with the way we're headed. But if you're talking manager wise, I think everyone's goal is to get 10. I think how we go about that is going to be interesting. But 5-year goal, I think that's very achievable, especially with just how quickly the league overturns, like the actual league. There's an option there, so that would be exciting to see. And I think in this off season, we're only 1 year in, but I think we've already pivoted towards 4 teams looking to win now and 4 teams looking to retool. So that makes it exciting. It might make a couple weeks interesting where you get some blowout weeks during the regular season, but I think there's enough engagement here that won't be an issue. But in 3 to 4 years, I think you might see. I mean, Eve's a lock to fall off. I think he's even acknowledged that. So there's some movement there. But I think in 3 to 4 years, I think you're going to see a full shift, a rotation, maybe even of bottom to top, which is what you want to see in a dynasty, right? So that's exciting to see.
Yeah, Brandon just wanted to hear that you view him as the contender in 3 to 5 years.
You just became my favorite manager here. You're my favorite Canadian.
Kyle did not say you're going to be a contender in 3 to 5 years. Those words did not come out of his mouth.
I guess he didn't technically say I was part of that flip, but whatever. Are you? Talk to me about trading away picks and stuff like that. Is that purely just I'm fully invested in winning now, or are you kind of one of those rookie averse sort of managers?
Yeah, I mean, we're an 8-man team. So to me, the picks, I mean, you either got to build a superstar squad or get out of the way. So I looked at my squad that night and said, you know what? I think when I made the first trade for Prescott and I said, okay, I'm happy, but I'm not quite over the top yet. And the picks just kind of kept disappearing. I don't know. So
where they all go?
Strategy going into it, but I'm happy. I'm happy with the way it turned out. It's going to be interesting to see if Brandon can hold on to all those young players, right? Like I think that's going to be a great experiment. And it'll be interesting to see if he trades them away for the same value for what he traded now to get them, right? So I would rather be on the buying end and buying a sure thing than the dart throws right now. I just think my team wasn't at the point where I could invest in some dart throws. Mm-hmm. I mean, I looked at the depth of my roster too. I was going to have to drop some handcuffs if I kept as many picks as I did, right? So I think I made it clear right from the get-go. Like I think the joke was I want to go to Vegas and not even draft. And I'm still close to there, right? So, managers reach out. But I think I'll be focusing on acquiring picks down the road. But I think a lot of the other managers are already doing that as well, especially next year's draft class. I mean, 2023, I think the value of those picks are going to be considerably more than this year, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think just looking at Brandon's roster and sort of the overall, some of the words that you said, Kyle, I called it the great experiment, like in terms of what Brandon's putting through. And, some of the dynasty community on YouTube, they call it the productive struggle, right? Just choosing to go through the rebuilding aspects of it. And you mentioned a really good point I want to touch on a little bit, which is ultimately when Brandon does buy back into players that are sure things, and he's obviously going to likely use some of the picks that he's accrued, no different than what I've done this offseason. is what do you end up getting more than what you traded away? It's interesting because I've never really thought about it that way, but I think the way that I sort of look at it is I actually think I think it's going to be fair for him to get equal value, because I don't think, you traded for, pennies on a dollar to get those picks by any means. I think, Brandon, you're a savvy manager. But I almost think about your strategy at large, assuming you can get at least equal value back. The benefit that you have is when you do the buying back, you're matching your timeline, right? So it's almost like trade for a piece that's just going to be stable and then use that same piece to buy all the pieces back when you're ready to contend. So I'm really excited to see, as just a fellow manager in the league, I'm really excited to see how this, great experiment sort of plays out for the league at large.
We'll get into that with my interview. I'll kind of dive into hopefully what I was thinking and maybe enlighten some people with that. But yeah, I mean, overall, we've said it again and again, Kyle, this is a team that's very much going to contend this season, next season, even further. I mean, a guy like Eckler doesn't have a whole lot of run on his tire, or, he hasn't, worn down the tread on those tires very much. And it seems like they love him there. He catches passes and everything. That's a guy that I think could push his prime further than your typical running back. And a guy like Eckler can kind of carry your team to the playoffs in an 8-team league almost by himself, considering the parity we have. So, guy's never been injured, knock on wood, for the most part. So I think you're set well, short and intermediate term. And it'll be fascinating to see, because I can already see you're not a manager that's just going to sit idly by into mediocrity. So, other than obviously being excited about my own sort of experiment, I'm excited to see, the moves you start to make in the next 2 to 3 years to kind of combat some of these, this mega team of Tims over here, with young guys at premium positions across the board. So I'm excited to see how your team unfolds in the next few years.
Hey, Kyle, just for sort of this last topic at large, one of the things I want to put in here that I would love to do for every manager is this topic called sort of ballsy bets. Looking at this league ahead, what are some crazy sort of calls that you want to make on the league about how things may, play out that will be a shocker for us to be talking about today?
Yeah, I think the craziest one is, I think it's pretty clear already, the top 4 and the bottom 4. I'm willing to go out and say right now that one of the top 4 will not make playoff. And I think that will make it interesting. I think there'll be some moves that are made. And that'll be exciting. I'm also interested to see who's going to have the highest ceiling week as well. That's going to be, with an 8-team league, like you were throwing numbers out there, like it's not crazy to think that you're going to have a 220 point week. It's just absolutely madness, right? So that'll be fun to see. I think your team, Tim, is the team to do it, or my team, in terms of just massive volume weeks. But Eve could throw one out there too, right? So that's going to be, it's going to be interesting. So those would be mine. I haven't looked at the player props yet or anything like that yet to throw any of those out. I think it's too early yet, but something to talk about later in the season, maybe some wild, crazy player props.
What do you think is going to be the season high this year scored, and by who? So just to give you context, the average weekly score we had last season was about 175. The average is the top score each league. And our top 3 scores was like 200, which was by the roster that actually, you and Sergey took over, Ben's. And that sort of came out of nowhere. And we had one at 190, or we had one at very high 180s. And then I believe Brandon, we probably had 2 or 3 scores total in the 180s. So maybe using that information, Kyle, what are we looking at?
I don't think I'm going to shift from what I said at the 220. I just think there's some teams now that are, but like that's a ballsy prediction right there. Like, you're talking every one of your guys hits that weekend for you, right? So now the other side of it, what's the low last year? Do we have data on that?
Oh my God, was that Brandon? Brandon, was that you last year?
I think it probably was me last year. Yeah, I think
it was like 80 or 90 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So 665 will be the floor.
But Brandon might average 65 this year, so that's not really a ballsy prediction.
No, it's true though. But the thing is that we start with your 3 flex, man, and 2 QB. Like, if you got the right QBs, man, you're putting up 55 points, you know, in just your QBs. So, yeah, that doesn't say much, but I'm excited for that interview later.
Good. Well, awesome. Hey, Kyle, I wanted to thank you again for joining the league. It's been a joy just having you in the league. I think it's added another dimension to our league that Brandon and I have been just seeking out since we started last year. So I wanted to thank you for that. Excited to have you on board. Excited for all the things that we're going to be doing for the next years ahead with you in the league. And thank you for enlightening us with your sort of predictions and your thoughts and outlook on the season at large for as a GM of the Moncton Meerkats.
Thank you. Appreciate that. No, I just try to look at it every day like I'm the Dennis Rodman of this league, you know, just trying to be an ambassador for Canada. So, you know, like I say, boys, I am going to Vegas. I don't like drafting. I still have some available. You know, we talked about my weaknesses. We definitely talked about my strengths. That's for sure. So, you know, let me know. The phone lines are always open here. So appreciate the time, boys.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Kyle.
Yep. Thank you.